We heard Bill's whining voice 1,800 miles away. Say, what do you boys expect me to do with this Helen Hinkle? She's been here 2 weeks now, hiding in a room and refusing to talk to either Joan or me. Have you got this character Al Hinkle with you? For Christ's sakes, bring him down. Get rid of her. She's sleeping in our best bedroom and it's run clear out of money. This ain't a hotel. We assured Bill with whoops and cries over the phone. There was Neil and Luann, Alan, Hinkle, me, John Holmes, his wife Marion, Ed Stringham, God knows who else, all yelling and drinking beer over the phone at befuddled Burroughs, who above all things hated confusion. Well, he said, maybe you'll better make sense of it when you get down here. I said goodbye to my mother and promised to be back in 2 weeks and took off for California again. You always expect some kind of magic at the end of the road. Strangely enough, Neil and I were going to find it, alone, before we finished. The New York kids stood around the car on York Avenue and they waved goodbye. Rhoda was there. Also George Wickstrom and Les Connors and someone else, the remnants of the big New Year's weekend that was never to be surpassed. That's right, Neil kept saying all the time. He was only concerned with locking the trunk and putting the proper things in the compartment and swinging and sweeping the floor and getting all ready for the purity of the road again, the purity of moving and getting somewhere no matter where and as fast as possible with as much excitement and digging of all things as possible. We roared off. At the last minute, Rhoda decided to ride down to Washington with us and came back by bus. She was in love with Big Al by now, and they sat in the back seat necking. As once again Neil pushed the Hudson through the Lincoln Tunnel, and we were in New Jersey. It was drizzling and mysterious at the beginning of our voyage. I could see that it was all going to be one big saga of the mist. "Whee!" yelled Neil. "Here we go!" And he hunched over the wheel, and he gunned her, and he was back in his element, and everybody could see that. We were all delighted. We all realized we were leaving confusion and nonsense behind and performing our one and noble function of the time: move. And we moved. We flashed past the mysterious white signs of the night somewhere in New Jersey that say south with an arrow and west with an arrow, and took the south one, New Orleans. It burned in our brains from the dirty snows of frosty Fagtown, New York, as Neil called it, all the way to the greeneries and river smells of old New Orleans at the washed out bottom of America, then west and then some. Luann and Neil and I sat in front and had the warmest talk about the goodness and the joy of life. Neil suddenly became tender. "Now damn it, look here all of you. We all must admit that everything is fine, and there's no need in the world to worry. And in fact, we should realize what it would mean to us to understand that we're not really worried about anything. Am I right?" And we all agreed. "Here we go. We're all together. What do we do in New York? Let's forgive." We all had our spats back there. That's behind us, merely by miles and inclinations, and now we're heading down to New Orleans to dig old Bill Burroughs, and ain't that gonna be kicks? And listen, will you, to this old tenement blow his top, and he shot up the radio volume till the car shuddered, and listen to him tell the story and put down true relaxation and knowledge, and we all jumped to the music and agreed the purity of the road, the white line in the middle of the highway, rolled and unrolled and hugged our left front tire as if glued to our groove. Neil hunched his muscular neck, t-shirted in the winter night, and blasted the car along. In no time, we were at the approaches of Philadelphia. Ironically, we were going over the same road to North Carolina for the third time. It was our route. I kept wondering what it was that I had forgotten back in New York. It unrolled behind me more and more, and I forgot more and more what it was. I brought it up. Everybody tried to guess what I had forgotten. It was no use. We had $40 to go all the way. All we had to do was pick up hitchhikers and bum quarters off them for gas as soon as we got rid of Rhoda. Rhoda began saying she wanted to come to New Orleans. With Al Hinkle's wife already waiting there for him, that was a fine idea. Neil said nothing. He knew in his own mind he was going to throw her out in Virginia, Washington. In Philadelphia, we lost Route 1 and suddenly found ourselves groping down a narrow little tar road in the middle of the woods. "We've suddenly come into a fairy tale Route 1 in the Mother Hubbard woods. Dig it. Gingerbread houses already." We had no idea where we were. Neil was pleased to go on with the fairy tale a while. Finally, the road came to a dead-end swamp. "The end of the road?" He wheeled the car around, and we roared back to Philly and got on Route 1 and arrived in Baltimore in an hour and a half. Neil insisted I drive through Baltimore for traffic practice. That was all right, except he and Luann insisted on steering while they kissed and fooled around. It was crazy. The radio was on full blast. Neil beat drums on the dashboard till a great sag developed in it. The poor Hudson, the slow boat to China, was receiving her beating. "Oh man, what kicks!" yelled Neil. "Now Luann, listen, really, honey. You know that I'm capable of doing everything at the same time, and I have unlimited energy. Now in San Francisco, we must go on living together. I know just the place for you. At the end of the SP day run, San Luis Obispo, I'll be home every night. I'll be back at Carolyn's every morning. We can work it. We've done it before." It was all right with Luann. She was really out for Carolyn's scalp. The understanding had been that Luann would switch to me in San Francisco, but I now began to see that they were going to stick, and I was going to be left alone on my ass at the other end of the continent. But why think about that when all the golden land's ahead of you and all kinds of unforeseen events wait lurking to surprise you and make you glad you're alive? We arrived in Washington at dawn. It was the day of Harry Truman's inauguration for his second term in the presidency. Great displays of war might were lined along Pennsylvania Avenue as we rolled in by our battered boat. There were B-29s, PT boats, artillery, all kinds of war material laid out in snowy grass. The last thing was a regular, small, ordinary lifeboat that looked pitiful and foolish. Neil slowed down to look at it. He kept shaking his head in awe. "What are these people up to? Ah, holy American slapjaws. Harry's sleeping somewhere in this town. Good old Harry, man from Missouri as I am. That must be his boat." We suddenly found ourselves trapped in a circular drive from which there was no exit. We had to go to the end of it. We huzzaed. There was a restaurant. We were hungry, but the restaurant was closed, and we had to run back over to the same no-exit circular drive. We found the human highway again. I've never seen that strange thing since. It's in Virginia, just off Washington Bridge. There's no way but to patronize the restaurant, and if the restaurant is closed, that's your tough shit. That was all right. We found a lunch cart. Hinkle immediately jammed coffee cakes in his jacket. He was a compulsive thief. I could see it was going to be some trip. We ate and paid half of what we ate. In the scraggly Virginia dawn, poor Rhoda, head bowed, huddled in her coat, not wanted for Cal, made her way to a crossroads bus stop on foot, and that was the last of Rhoda. Neil went to sleep in the back seat, and Hinkle drove, and we gave him specific instructions to take it easy. No sooner were we snoring than he gunned the car up to 80, bad rods and all. And not only that, but he made a triple pass at a spot where a cop was arguing with a motorist. He was in the fourth lane of a 4-lane highway, going the wrong way. Naturally, the cop took after us with his siren whining, and we were stopped, and he told us to follow him to the station house. There was a mean cop in there who took an immediate dislike for Neil. He could smell jail all over him. He sent his cohort outdoors to question Luann and I privately, and they wanted to know how old Luann was. They were trying to whip up a Mann Act idea, but she had her marriage license. Then they took me aside alone and wanted to know who was sleeping with Luann. Her husband, I said quite simply. They were curious. Something was fishy. They tried some amateur Sherlocking by asking some questions twice, expecting us to make a slip. I said, "Those two fellows are going back to work on the railroad in California. This is the short one's wife, and I'm a friend on a 2-week vacation from college." The cop smiled and said, "Yeah? Is this really your own wallet?" Finally, the mean one inside fined Neil $25, and we told them we only had 40 to go all the way to the coast. They said that made no difference to them, and when Neil protested, the mean cop threatened to take him back to Pennsylvania and slap a special charge on him. "What charge?" "Never mind what charge. Don't worry about that, wise guy." We had to give them 40. And then Al Hinkle, who was the culprit, offered to go to jail so we could resume our journey. Neil considered it. The cop was infuriated. He said, "If you let your buddy go to jail, I'm taking you back to Pennsylvania right now. You hear that?" It was all confused, and we had to give them the money, and most of it was in my pocket. When they saw where it came from, they gave me dirty looks, and all we wanted to do was go. "Another speeding ticket in Virginia and you lose your car," said the mean cop, just as a parting volley. Neil was red in the face. We drove off silently. It was just like an invitation to steal, to take all our trip money away, and they knew we were broke and had no relatives on the road or relatives to wire for money or anything. The American police are involved in psychological warfare against those Americans who don't frighten them with imposing papers and threats. There's no defense. Poor people have to expect to have their lives interfered with ad infinitum by these neurotic busybodies. It's a Victorian police force. It peers out of musty windows and wants to inquire about everything and can make crimes if the crimes don't exist to their satisfaction. Neil was so mad he wanted to come back to Virginia and shoot the cop as soon as he had a gun. Pennsylvania, he scoffed. I wish I knew what that charge was. Vag, probably. Take all my money and charge me vag. Those guys have it so damned easy. They'll go out and they'll shoot you if you complain, too. There was nothing to do but get happy with ourselves again and forget about it. When we got through Richmond, we began forgetting about it, and soon everything was okay.